Wow, we've got a lot happening today. We've got some of the largest financial institutions continuing to adopt Bitcoin. We even have some of the world's largest banks coming out with some massive news. We have a signal that says that Ethereum could pass Bitcoin. We've got another buy signal for Bitcoin called the Pull Multiple that we'll dive into, and a whole lot more in today's show. Hey, what's up there? My name is Adam Winnig, and if you like cryptocurrencies, then I encourage you to like, subscribe, and turn on the post notifications so that way you don't miss the daily update show. This show is designed to update you on everything that you need to know that's happening in the vast world of cryptocurrencies in 10 minutes or less. Okay, with that being said, let's go ahead and dive into it. We'll take a look at prices. We'll look at some of the charts real quick, and then we'll get into some of the news because there's a lot of really cool news that's happening today. As you see, it's another massive green day. We can see Bitcoin up nearly 6%, Ethereum up 10%. I mean, everything across the board. XRP up 14%, Polkadot up 12%, everything pretty much in the green, anywhere from like 5 to 20% again today. So another really good day. Let's take a look at the charts before we get into the news. We can see the total market cap here. It looks like we've just had, kind of 4 green candles here in a row, 4 days in a row, which is really great. We can see here as well on the hourly chart. If we look at Bitcoin, what's happening, we see that Bitcoin is kind of making its move on upwards. We'll see if it tests this higher area of this range around $40,000 to $42,000. It looks like it could move on up there quite quickly. We see on the SGA, the histogram is growing upwards, continuing. These lines are continuing to get closer and flatter, which is another good sign as well. And then if we take a look at Ethereum has had some really nice price action. It looks like, we had this kind of dump and consolidation and then dump again where we're shaking out some of the weak hands. And again, this is happening across the market. This is what looks like to be a Wyckoff accumulation, where this is how smart money basically steals from dumb money, essentially, where strong hands steals from weak hands. They, with this price sort of pattern, and they're pushing people out of their positions here, and then boom, price starts to recover. So that's what it looks like to be happening here. But what actually is happening in the news that could be causing some of this? Well, a lot of really awesome stuff continues to happen on the institutional level. We have Cathie Wood's ARK Invest teams up to enter the Bitcoin ETF race, which if you don't know Cathie Wood, then she is one of the leaders in all of finance. She's very, very well respected. She's known for her forward thinking, and she's really kind of at the cutting edge of technology with a lot of her ETFs, but she is filed to come in as an ETF to support Bitcoin, which is really awesome. And this continues to just happen all across the board. We can see that at this point, there's 13 Bitcoin ETF applications in right now. Many of them, some of the biggest names in finance, like Cathie Wood. It's a win, not an if, right? TikTok, the clock is ticking. We already see ETFs opening all around the world. We saw, obviously, earlier this year, we saw Canada. We saw just recently, last week, we saw an ETF open in Brazil. And what does this actually mean? This is massive, massive news. When ETFs open in America, that's going to allow for a flood of money in people's IRAs and Roth IRAs to invest into Bitcoin really easily. And so this is going to be a tsunami wave of money coming into the space. And it's just a matter of time when this is going to actually happen. And we also see the world's largest Bitcoin ETF, which is called Purpose. They're actually accelerating their Bitcoin buying, as you can see here, which is really quite cool. They're continuing to buy up more and more Bitcoin, especially during this dip and this pullback phase that we've been part of. Now, it's not just the ETFs. We also see big news coming from Morgan Stanley that have revealed their stake in the Bitcoin Trust. The Bitcoin Grayscale Trust. Again, the Grayscale Bitcoin Trust is basically a trust that owns a whole bunch of Bitcoin, and they own like $20 billion worth of Bitcoin. And so other institutions can buy up the Bitcoin Grayscale Trust in order to participate in the Bitcoin upside potential of the market. We also see here that Morgan Stanley holds 28,000 Grayscale Bitcoin Trust shares valued at over $800 million, which is really quite awesome that we see Morgan Stanley coming in and buying up this much of the Bitcoin Grayscale Trust, which they're basically just following the likes of Goldman Sachs and JP Morgan, who have also adopted Bitcoin as interest in the asset class continues to grow. here's something quite interesting, okay? This was funny. Congrats to the Fed, a new high score. If you're not getting 22% ROI on your investments in 2021, you're going backwards. And if we take a look at this chart here, it's really quite interesting, right? The money printer doesn't stop, right? Like every time they print money, they have to print more money, right? If we take a look at this chart real quick, we can see that the black line, this is the growth in the M2 monetary inflation, and the red line is CPI, so Consumer Price Index, right? And we can see that the real rate of inflation is really, really high right now, which basically, this is the reason why I think a lot of these ETFs and whatnot are popping up, is everyone's starting to realize that, even if you invest your money into real estate or into the stock market, and the stock market does 15% or does 10% a year like it's done historically, well, that's not going to cut it anymore, because the money printer is printing so much money, and the real actual inflation behind what the true inflation is increasing so much. So yeah, if you're not getting 22% return on investment, then you're actually going backwards. That's why so many people are flooding into cryptocurrencies, because it's pretty much the only asset class that's performing that well. Okay, another interesting thing is Ethereum's daily active addresses has surpassed Bitcoin for the first time in history. So this is a really big deal. You can see it kind of in this little chart right here, but for the first time ever, Ethereum addresses have actually spiked and have crossed Bitcoin addresses. So this is really bullish news for Ethereum. We have heard talks of, will there be a flippening where Ethereum actually flips Bitcoin? And that's not too far off to actually say that could happen. And we see other things starting to support it, like this active addresses for the first time surpassing Bitcoin active addresses. Now let's take a look at something called the pull multiple really quick. I think this is important, so let me pull this up. So this is something known as the pull multiple, which basically takes into account the daily coin issuance divided by the 365-day moving average. To put it kind of simply, all that really means is it's basically looking at the supply side of Bitcoin's economy. It's highly correlated with what's happening with miners, okay? And essentially, we can take a look here. It has, this is kind of like a buy signal, this green bar down here, and this red area up here is known as a sell signal. And as you can see, it's been historically very, very accurate, right? If we take a look back here, every time it's went into this green area has signaled kind of a bottom. This is only the 5th time ever in history that we've seen this sort of buy signal happen. So this is another idea that, we really could be at a bottom. I mean, if you look at it, every time it hits a low, price kind of goes on up quite a bit. And this could be the 5th time in history. I think this is an interesting thing to take a look at. So recently there's this huge scam that happened in South Africa. It's just sad to see so many scams happening in Africa. So much unethical business happens in Africa in general, but this South African asset manager denies stealing billions from users, claims $5 million was lost in a hack. There's basically these two brothers that opened up this Bitcoin fund and supposedly stole like $3.6 million of $3.6 billion worth of Bitcoin, and it completely just vanished. But they've been saying that they're only managing like $200 million, but supposedly it's actually like $3.6 billion. So this is something that is not good news and horrible for people that have sent their money to this fund. That's why I would just, say that, why not just hold the Bitcoin yourself, right? Instead of having somebody else do it for you. I don't know. So last piece of news here before I get into this last piece of news, which is quite important, I did want to let you know that we did just create a free report called How to Find Viral Altcoins Before the Rest of the Internet Does. And we basically show you how to find viral altcoins. As you know, there's massive money-making potential in finding altcoins before the rest of the herd does. And we show you how to find them before you hear about them on Facebook and Twitter. And you can download that. Just go to blueedgecrypto.com/viral. Now, the last piece of news here basically says that Bitcoin is doomed as a payment system and its novelty will fade, says Federal Reserve Board of Governor members. They're just this is just so backwards in their thinking. This reminds me of like Blockbuster technology, right? Like Blockbuster, back people would go to the video store and they'd rent videos, and then, you know, streaming services like Netflix came around and they're completely out of business. And it's the same thing that's happening in finance, and people are just getting it completely wrong. This guy is basically saying that the anonymity will make it appropriately the target for increasing comprehensive scrutiny and law enforcement, and the novelty is a rapidly wasting asset. Gold will always glitter, but novelty by definition fades. Bitcoin and its ilk will almost certainly remain a risky and speculative investment rather than a revolutionary means of payment. Which, I don't know. If you look at what's happening in El Salvador, they accept it as legal tender. The way that they're able to buy the coffee, they go in there, they click the QR code, they click send, and the money goes instantly. So to say it's not a viable payment form is just absolutely ridiculous, and they clearly don't understand the asset. So, and for the case of it being anonymous, I mean, it's not really. Bitcoin is quite trackable, as we know. They've just got it completely backwards, but you know, it is what it is, okay? And I hope that they just get left in the dust, and I think that's gonna happen. Okay, if this video was helpful and you'd like to stay up to date with everything crypto related, go ahead and like, comment, let us know what your opinion is on what's happening in the crypto market right now. Subscribe and do all that great stuff, and we'll see you in tomorrow's episode. Bye, everybody.